Welcome to District Command Central, your go-to source for the latest news and updates on the Washington Commanders. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a play. When you look at the Washington Commanders right now, it really feels like a franchise standing at the edge of a long off-season cliff, staring down at what comes next and knowing that the final snap of the regular season is more of a formality than a turning point. With only one game left in the 2025 season and a record that sits at 4 wins and 12 losses, the focus inside the building and among the fan base has already shifted. This is no longer about playoff scenarios or late-season miracles. This is about evaluation, positioning, and setting the table for a critical stretch that will define the direction of the organization for years to come. The finale against the Philadelphia Eagles still matters, not because of the standings, but because it represents one last chance to see who belongs, who can grow, and who might not be part of the long-term vision. As the league wrapped up the Week 17 slate of games, the overall picture of the 2026 NFL draft order started to sharpen, and for Washington, clarity is a rare and valuable thing. There's been a lot of scoreboard watching, a lot of quiet rooting for certain outcomes, and a lot of mental math about strength of schedule and tiebreakers. Now, heading into the final week, the Commanders know their range. They know their floor, and they know their ceiling. And even though the exact slot is still up in the air, the fog is lifted enough to allow the front office and coaching staff to begin preparing for real scenarios instead of hypothetical chaos. At this moment, the most important takeaway is that Washington will be selecting no later than 7th overall in the first round of the 2026 NFL Draft. That alone carries significant weight. Finishing with such a high pick is never the goal, but it is the reality when a season spirals the way this one has. The Commanders needed a specific combination of results around the league to improve their draft position, and while some of those results broke their way, others did not. One of the key moments came when the Cleveland Browns pulled off an upset victory over the Pittsburgh Steelers, pushing Cleveland to the same 4-12 record as Washington. Despite the identical win-loss mark, the Browns currently sit ahead of the Commanders due to a lower strength of schedule, a detail that feels small but looms large in draft positioning. That situation is still fluid because the final week always brings surprises. Certain matchups in the last slate of games could swing strength of schedule calculations. And of course, another Browns one would lock in their spot regardless. For Washington, the path is simple but uncomfortable. If the Commanders manage to win their finale, while Cleveland loses, Washington would be locked into picking no later than 7th overall. It is a strange place to be, hoping for losses and calculating margins, but that is the reality of a rebuilding year that never quite found its footing. Now, if you want to dream, if you want to imagine the absolute best-case scenario from a draft perspective, there is a path, even if it borders on fantasy. For Washington to climb as high as possible, they would need to lose their final game, while the Browns, the New York Giants, the New York Jets, and the Arizona Cardinals would all need to win. Every single one of those wins would bump the Commanders up a spot in the draft order. If everything broke perfectly, the ceiling would be the 2nd overall pick. That outcome is extremely unlikely, bordering on miraculous, but the fact that it exists at all shows just how volatile the bottom of the standings can be in the final week of an NFL season. Reality, however, tends to be far less dramatic. The most likely outcome for Washington is finishing with either the 6th or 7th overall pick. That range comes with both opportunity and frustration. On one hand, you are still drafting near the top of the board, with access to elite talent. On the other hand, you're just outside the truly premium zone, the area where quarterback-hungry teams tend to get aggressive and where trade-down opportunities often explode. Ending up just outside the top 5 after a season with only 4 or 5 wins feels brutal, because it limits flexibility at a time when flexibility is desperately needed. That brings us to the big question hovering over Washington's offseason plans. What do the Commanders do with that first-round pick? Trading back would be ideal in a vacuum. Washington currently holds only 6 total picks in the draft, and accumulating more assets would accelerate the rebuild. The problem is market demand. Historically, Teams are far more willing to trade up into the top 5 than they are to move into the 6th or 7th slot, unless a truly unexpected prospect falls. There is still a lot of time between now and draft night in April, and narratives can change, but as things stand, it is hard to imagine a bidding war forming for that spot. Quarterback dynamics further complicate the situation. This draft class does not appear to be overflowing with first-round caliber quarterbacks, and the few that do carry that grade are likely to be off the board early. In most scenarios, you need a top 5 pick to realistically secure one of them. That reality could force Washington into a different approach, one that focuses on building the roster around the quarterback position rather than chasing it at all costs. Staying put and selecting the best player available may be the most practical option. Prospects like safety Caleb Downs, edge rusher Reuben Bain Jr., wide receiver Jordan Tyson, or running back Jeremiah Love all represent different ways to improve the team. Each player brings a unique skill set and addresses a different need, and the decision will say a lot about how the Commanders view their identity moving forward. Are they prioritizing defense and physicality, speed and playmaking, or balance and long-term stability? No matter which direction they choose, the margin for error is thin. When you are rebuilding, every single pick matters. There is no room for wasted selections or half measures. Washington has to nail this draft, not just at the top, but throughout the entire process. The goal is not just to improve in 2026, but to build a foundation that can support sustained success beyond that. This offseason is not about one player or one decision. It is about alignment, patience, and finally turning a clearer draft picture into a clearer future for the Commanders and their long-suffering fan base. If you're enjoying the coverage, make sure to smash that like button and drop a comment with your thoughts on the Commanders' latest moves. We want to hear from you. If you follow this league the way we do, you know that some stories never really end. They just go quiet for a while until the timing feels right again, and that is exactly the kind of energy surrounding the sudden buzz about Chase Young finding his way back to Washington in what people around the league are calling a lightning-fast trade. Nothing official has been paraded yet. No press conference theatrics, no perfectly framed photos, but the whispers are loud, the connections make sense, and the idea of Young once again wearing those colors is catching fire among insiders, former teammates, and fans who never truly let go of the vision that started it all. This is not being sold as a blockbuster master plan months in the making, but more like a door that cracked open unexpectedly and was pushed through before anyone could overthink it. The kind of move that happens when opportunity meets urgency. What makes this rumor so fascinating is the emotional layer tied to it. Chase Young was once seen as a foundational pillar, a player drafted to be the face of a defensive rebuild and the embodiment of a new identity. His early flashes set expectations sky high, and even when things got complicated, there was always that sense that the story felt unfinished. People inside the building never stopped respecting his talent, and people outside never stopped wondering what might happen if the timing, the health, and the structure finally aligned. This potential return is not being framed as a simple reunion tour or a nostalgia play, but rather as a calculated belief that the player Young is now could fit better than the player he was back then, especially in a locker room that has evolved and in a system that knows exactly how to deploy his strengths without asking him to be everything all at once. From what is being murmured, the speed of this deal is what caught most observers off guard. There was no long media buildup, no endless debate shows arguing hypothetical packages, just a quiet understanding between front offices that something could be done quickly if both sides agreed on value and direction. Washington, according to the chatter, saw a window to add a pass rusher with familiarity, upside, and something to prove without committing to a long and messy negotiation. The other side, meanwhile, reportedly recognized that Young's best chance to reset his narrative might be in a place where the expectations are known, the environment is familiar, and the coaching staff understands his personality as much as his tape. For Commanders fans, this rumor hits differently. There is a mix of excitement, skepticism, and cautious hope, all swirling together. They remember the dominant moments, the explosive first steps, the way opposing quarterbacks seemed uncomfortable when Young was rolling. They also remember the injuries, the frustration, the sense that something never quite clicked the way it was supposed to. That is why this potential return is being discussed not as a guarantee of greatness, but as a high upside swing that feels more grounded than people might expect. The narrative coming out is not that Young is arriving to save the defense, but that he's coming back to be a piece, a dangerous one, but still part of a larger puzzle that does not rest entirely on his shoulders. Around the league, there's also talk about how much Young himself might have pushed for this. Players do not always admit it publicly, but comfort matters, especially after bouncing around and dealing with uncertainty. Returning to Washington offers him a chance to reestablish his value in a place where he already has roots, relationships, and a fan base that knows exactly who he is. The speculation suggests that Young sees this as an opportunity to write a new chapter without erasing the old ones, to show growth not just as an athlete, but as a professional who understands the business side of football better than before. From a schematic perspective, the rumor mill is buzzing about how Washington plans to use him. This is not about lining him up and letting him freelance on every snap. The idea being floated is a more disciplined, more strategic deployment, letting him attack in specific situations where his burst and power can be maximized. That approach could help keep him fresh, reduce wear and tear, and allow him to be explosive when it matters most. Coaches love players who can accept that kind of role, and insiders suggest that Young is more open to it now than he might have been earlier in his career, which is a big part of why this reunion suddenly feels plausible. Financially, the speculation paints this as a smart, low-drama move. Not a massive long-term gamble, not a headline-grabbing contract that ties the franchise's future to one player, but a flexible agreement that protects the team while giving Young the chance to earn more with performance. That kind of structure aligns perfectly with a player looking to reestablish himself and a front office focused on maintaining adaptability. It is the kind of deal that does not scream desperation from either side, which is often the sign of a negotiation that actually makes sense. What adds another layer to this rumor is the timing within the broader arc of Washington's season. There's a sense that the team believes it is closer than people think, that the defense in particular is one impact piece away from being truly disruptive. Bringing back a familiar pass rusher could inject energy not just on the field but in the locker room, reminding everyone of the standards that were once envisioned and could still be achieved. Veterans reportedly like the idea. Younger players are curious about what it means for their roles, and the coaching staff seems confident that they can manage the dynamics without it becoming a distraction. Of course, no rumor like this comes without critics. Some analysts are already questioning whether this is a step backward instead of forward, whether revisiting old chapters prevents a team from fully moving on. Others wonder if the physical concerns will resurface or if the expectations from fans will once again become unfairly heavy. Those doubts are part of the conversation, and they are not being ignored. But the counterargument gaining traction is that growth often comes from revisiting situations with new perspective, and that players are not static entities frozen in time. Chase Young today is not the same Chase Young who first arrived, and Washington today is not the same organization either. As this story continues to simmer, what stands out most is how natural it feels despite the surprise. Sometimes the most interesting moves are not the ones that shock the league with sheer audacity, but the ones that quietly realign paths that were never meant to stay apart forever. If this deal truly goes through the way people are suggesting, it will not be about rewriting history, but about testing whether the unfinished business between Chase Young and Washington still has something meaningful left to offer. And if nothing else, it gives everyone watching a reason to lean in, to pay closer attention, and to wonder if this unexpected reunion might finally deliver the version of the story that both sides once dreamed about. Thanks for tuning into District Command Central. Make sure to subscribe and follow us for all the Commanders news you need. Until next time, keep the faith and hail to the Commanders.